All right, so this is what we're doing today. We're doing something a little bit different. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a variety of different subjects. And I'm looking down because I've got a list of things that I'm going to talk about. And I was going to tell you how many, but I couldn't count and tell you at the same time. So we'll just say a variety. There's a few different topics that I want to tackle today. What that basically means is if you're watching this on Instagram, go to my YouTube channel and you'll be able to get the whole video, because what I'm going to do is just upload a little bit of this on my Instagram, because you can only put like I think 10 minutes or 15 minutes on Instagram, and I reckon I'm going to go longer than that today. Alternatively, you can go on my you can download my podcast on your favorite podcast platform. I'm on all of them: Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, Google. Wherever you look, I'll be there. All you got to do is search The Battle Camp. Yeah, so that's all of the housekeeping stuff out of the way. So let's just talk about the stuff that we're here to talk about, not me and my shitty content. So first and foremost, Israel Adesanya and Jon Jones. So look, it's like, you know when two people are swinging a skipping rope and there's someone in the middle and they're like trying to wait. Like, when shall I start jumping? When shall I catch the wave? That's what I've been like when it comes to this particular topic, because every day something happens and I'm like, well, let's just wait and then we'll talk about it tomorrow. And then I'll go to sleep and then I'll wake up in the morning and they've been going at each other on Twitter again. Do you know what I mean? They've been going back and forth ever since Izzy won, which wasn't even last weekend, it was the weekend before. So it's been going on for over a week. They've just been talking absolute shit about each other. And there's a couple of things that I just wanted to weigh in on, just wanted to weigh in on a couple of things with regards to their ongoing beef. Firstly, I saw a lot of people getting their panties in a bunch because Israel Adesanya mentioned Jon Jones's mum, who is now unfortunately deceased. And a lot of people got quite angry about that. Oh no, he shouldn't be talking about the dead. He shouldn't be talking about Jon Jones's mum. But I didn't see what all the fuss was about, because he didn't disrespect Jon Jones's mum. He just mentioned his mum in a tweet that was disrespecting Jon Jones. And that was in a response to a tweet that Jon Jones posted about Israel Adesanya's dad. And all Israel Adesanya said is, your mum would not be proud of you or something like that, or she'd be ashamed of you, one of those two. That's not disrespecting his mum, and I didn't quite understand why people were so angry about the fact that Israel Adesanya had said that. That's kind of all I wanted to say about that one topic. But all of that aside, the way these two have been going back and forth on Twitter, you'd think that they've got a fight booked. Do you know what I mean? Like, the back and forth between them, the clear and obvious dislike that they have for each other, it just makes me feel like there's no better time for them two to fight each other, because there's no clear number one contender in the 185-pound division, because obviously Jared Cannonier is going to be fighting Whitaker, and I think that's in November or something like that. No, actually, that's on the undercard of the Khabib fight, so that's October 24, something along those lines. So they ain't fighting for another month. No, it's not even another month, it's a couple of weeks. Fucking hell, man. Time flies when you're not having fun, eh? So they ain't fighting for another couple of weeks. So they're going to need some time off and turn around for another... If they are to fight, I don't think another 185-pound fight will happen before the end of the year. I'm pretty sure Israel Adesanya has already said that he wants to fight before the end of the year. Jon Jones doesn't have a dance partner. He clearly wants to fight. He's clearly itching to get back in there. He wants to be in the centre of attention again. And this is the perfect opportunity for this fight to be made. And the reason I say that is there's no title at stake. So if the two of them fight at 205 pounds, UFC don't have this dilemma about asking Israel Adesanya, you got to move up now. You got to be a light heavyweight. Like, you can't hold two belts at once. We can't have two divisions being held up because there's a bottleneck, because there's only one champion. I don't think a fight between Jon Jones and Israel Adesanya needs a belt. I think it's big enough to sell, and I think it would sell shitloads, because I think the way these two, the dynamic between the two of them, and during the promotion of the fight, I think this is the kind of fight that can gather a lot of steam and a lot of attention from the casual audience. I just think timing wise for both fighters, it's good timing. Like John Jones clearly has been quite vocal about the fact that he wants to move up to heavyweight, but he's not done it yet. And he's kind of in no man's land. He's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, because he wants to move up to heavyweight, but he isn't in a position to demand a title shot right off the bat, because of the fact that Francis Ngannou is just such a clear-cut number one contender. Stipe Miocic is dragging his heels over a fight with Khabib, and why would he want to fight? I mean, with Francis. I don't know why I said Khabib there. With Francis, and there's like a bit of a standoff at heavyweight in terms of what the next fight is going to be. And I don't think that John Jones figures in any of those plans. So if he is to move up to heavyweight, one, he's already in a bit of a difficult position with the UFC over what he is demanding in terms of pay. And he's not going to get his demands in terms of pay fighting any heavyweight, right? If he wants to get paid what he thinks he deserves, then the fight that will get him to that level or close to it is a fight against Israel Adesanya. From Israel Adesanya's standpoint, I don't feel like he's got much to lose apart from bragging rights. I honestly don't feel like if he goes up to 205 and loses, I don't think that will hinder or that will be a black mark on his legacy as such, because he's not exactly. I mean, he's tall. He's a tall guy, but he's not a big middleweight. He's not a guy that needs to cut massive amount of weight just to get down to middleweight. Like he weighs in regularly, like below the 185-pound mark. I'm pretty sure he weighed in for his fight against Paulo Costa at 183, 184 pounds, and he had something around his neck, which obviously weighed a few pounds as well. So he was even lighter than that. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know what he walks around at. All I know is that 205 would... One, it won't be an issue for him. And two, I feel like, and I'm going to come into my next point, John Jones wouldn't struggle to get back down to 205. Like I've heard people, I won't say people, I heard DC and Helwani discussing this fight. And DC was making this point about John Jones and how this fight, if they have it, it should be at catch weight at 210 pounds or something like that. And I was thinking, why? Like, he hasn't actually made the jump. He hasn't gone and really bulked up and got to a position where going back to 205 is a no-go for him anymore. Like, let's remember, when he was off banned, all he was doing was lifting weights and bulking up and getting bigger for some reason. Like, he just fell in love with weightlifting. And that was... A lot of people attributed his performance against Ovin St. Preux because of the fact that he spent so much time in the gym lifting weights rather than drilling technique. Do you know what I mean? So he's already done that before. He's already put on weight. He's already put on size and muscle, but he's managed to come back down to 205 pounds. So I don't think he has the body shape that will make it impossible for him to come down to 205, even if he does bulk up in an attempt to go to heavyweight. But right now he hasn't even started that, or he might have started that journey, but he's not so far along where he can't turn back and get back to 205 pounds. So I don't understand why there's so much like, oh, well, it's going to be difficult for him. No, it's not going to be difficult. It shouldn't be difficult. Like, it might be difficult for Daniel Cormier, but it won't be difficult for John Jones. And those two guys are built very differently. Do you know what I mean? Like, a lot of people are actually now turning the other way when it comes to this fight. When people are kind of considering who's going to win this fight, a lot of people are basically saying that, oh, I think Israel would beat John Jones. And one, I think it's very difficult. It's a natural human kind of instinct to lean on recency bias, and you see what Israel Adesanya has been doing at middleweight, and then you see John Jones, even though he's been winning his fights at light heavyweight, they haven't been as emphatic as they once were. So then you start weighing those two things up, and you start thinking to yourself, oh, you know, Israel's really good at this. His takedown defense is really good. I think Israel Adesanya would beat John Jones and whatnot. So I try not to do that, but I'm not going to sit here and say I think Israel Adesanya is going to win. I've just got this theory on John Jones, and a lot of people are predicating this opinion on John Jones basically declining in his ability. Like, he's not as good as he was. I saw Luke Thomas kind of rattling off a list of his attempt or his takedown success. You know, he attempted 9 takedowns in this fight and he only succeeded twice, and he attempted 7 in this fight and he only succeeded 3 times, and in this fight he tried it 8 times and he done it once, but that didn't really count because his opponent got right back up. I made those numbers up, but that was kind of what he was trying to say. He was giving examples of the fight, his most recent fight, so against Reyes, against Santos, and against, who else did he fight before that? Smith. So those were the examples he was giving. And I've said this previously months ago, and I'm going to say it again. I don't know whether Jon Jones has declined so much. I just think his instinct for fighting has changed. And the reason his instinct for fighting has changed is I think the level of competition in front of him just has improved so much. Like, the Jon Jones that we think about is from an era where fighters had obvious strengths and weaknesses. The era that these guys are fighting in at the moment, everybody's well-rounded. You might have a strength. Israel's strength is clearly his stand-up, but that doesn't mean that his takedown defense is non-existent. That doesn't mean that if he's in on the ground in bottom position, he can't work his way back up. And these are the kind of guys that Jon Jones was fighting when he first burst onto the scene and he first became champion. People like Rampage Jackson. Like, Rampage Jackson is a legend of the sport and he's achieved so much. But that fight against Jon Jones, you just knew if Jon Jones takes him down, even though Rampage had this wrestling background, you just knew if Jon Jones takes him down, he'll struggle to get back up. And that's what happened. But that's not what fighters these days, generally speaking, that get to that level where they're fighting for titles, they don't suffer from these problems. They don't suffer from problems where they have big gaping holes in their technique, and there's obvious areas that you can expose and you can focus on with your attacks when you're fighting against them. So I don't know whether Jon Jones has declined so much. I just think that he is he fights with his head a lot, and he understands the level of risk when he's attempting different techniques. And he understands what when he attempts the technique, what he can be countered with. So he's just been more risk averse now. Does that mean that he takes less risks? Because that's what I'm trying to say in a posh way. Does that make sense? He understands what tools his opponents have, so he takes less risks and less chances. And what that basically shows is someone that is less explosive, and someone that isn't able to use techniques that we've seen him use previously, so then we think, oh, he's declined. But he hasn't declined. I just think the competition he's fighting has just improved. And the reason I'm talking about this is Israel Adesanya is a guy on paper that will really trouble Jon Jones, because he's a guy who has good length, and he's a guy that is able to stuff takedowns and keep the fight in an arena that he likes best. So the big question in this fight would be, can Jon Jones close the distance? And if he closes the distance, can he actually get Israel Adesanya to the ground? Because if they just go into a straight stand-up fight, there's only one winner. There's only one winner. And this is why this fight for me is so exciting, and it needs to happen now. And there's this comparison that people make. Oh, is it going to be like Canelo when he fought Mayweather? Like, is it going to come too soon? Is it going to come too late, etc., etc.? I don't think that fits this correctly. And what I think fits this better, and I've forgotten his name now, which is a shame, so I'm going to have to look at it. Let me go on Wikipedia. Because who's the guy that fought Errol Spence Jr.? Errol Spence Jr. Because he was a guy that fought at 135 pounds or something, and then he moved up to 147 to fight Errol Spence. It was Mikey Garcia. So Mikey Garcia was a decorated champion, and then he moved up to 147 pounds. And the reason why I'm talking about him now is people were basically saying that, oh, Mikey Garcia might win this, that he's just got the technique, and Errol Spence schooled him. But the point is, it wasn't too soon for him. It wasn't a question of, oh, I know what Errol Spencer's doing, he's getting him early. It was a guy that was a decorated champion that had won belts in multiple weight classes before he made that move up. And I think this is closer to that. But the difference here is Mikey Garcia's frame and body isn't of a welterweight, even though he's still fighting in that weight class. His frame just isn't correct for that. Like, he stepped on the scales at 147 pounds and he looked fat. He didn't look like an athlete. Because physically, for me, he shouldn't be fighting in that weight class, in that division. But he just wanted to do it because that's the sexy weight class sort of thing. So yeah, why am I keep talking about that? Oh yeah, so look, when it comes to Israel Adesanya, I think Israel Adesanya can come in as a light heavyweight and look like a light heavyweight. And I think it's not a case of this being too early for Israel Adesanya. I don't think it's too early for him. I think this is a good time for this fight to happen. And the fact that there isn't a belt on the line at light heavyweight, it makes it even better. It makes it even better for the UFC and for us as fans, because we get to see a fight. Because I don't give a fuck about any belts. Do you know what I mean? We get to see the fight happen, and there's no bullshit, no politics. You can just go back down to 185 pounds and fight, you know, Jared Cannonier or Whitaker or whoever else is next on the list. But for now, this is the fight that needs to happen. And the way that this is being built, I can't see how the UFC aren't all over this and trying their best to make it happen. So yeah, I felt I was quite passionate there, you know. Felt the passion really pour out of me there. I'm just ticking off my list here. See, I've actually got a list. I've actually prepared for this, but I haven't prepared what I'm going to say. I've only just prepared, like, talk about this. Twitter beef, mother comment. Time is now for the fight. That was my next one. The next thing, Jones weight, question mark, DC Helwani. And the last one is Jones theory, which is what I spoke about at the end. So you get what I'm trying to say. The next thing I wanted to talk about is Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman calling out Israel Adesanya, saying that he is the toughest fight for Izzy at middleweight. And I really didn't know what to do with myself when I saw this, because like, I'm a big fan of Chris Weidman, and I've literally watched every single one of his fights as a UFC fighter. And those comments that he was saying, and I understand why he was doing it, and I get it, and whatever. But like, he's an intelligent man, innit? And I just didn't understand where he was coming from. Like, I got his point of view, I got what he was saying, but I didn't understand the logic behind it. Like, have you not thought about this, mate? Have you not sat down and had a word with yourself about all of this? Like, why are you saying all of this stuff? As a fighter, obviously, you have to have confidence in yourself. You have to have self-belief. You have to be motivated. And I respect Weidman because clearly he has all of those attributes. But the version of Chris Weidman that we've seen of late isn't a guy that is capable of doing any harm to Israel Adesanya. I don't know whether it's just injuries, age, wear and tear. Again, the level of competition has just improved. I don't know what it is that has made Chris Weidman into this version of himself. But I feel like Chris Weidman needs to adjust either to the competition or to himself, and basically turn into a fighter that isn't a guy that just goes in there and is able to flow with his opponent. And if the fight goes to the ground, I'm better than him on the ground. If we stay on the feet, I'm better than him on the feet. If we have to wrestle, I'm a good wrestler. I can out wrestle him. Like, that's the kind of image I had of Chris Weidman back 5-10 years ago. Now I feel like he's a guy that needs a strong, robust game plan. Someone that needs to understand what his opponent's weaknesses are, a specific idea of this is what we're going to target and this is how we're going to get there. He needs to become. I feel like he needs to change as a fighter, and I just don't feel like he has the skills in his skill set to really worry Israel Adesanya. But all of that aside, he's a guy that his most recent performances, I'm not even going to pull up his Wikipedia page, but I know he's had a number of defeats back to back, and then he fought that tough Russian guy most recently, and you know he didn't cover himself in glory in that fight, you know, and I don't know, it just felt a little bit desperate, and I hate saying stuff like this about fighters that I like, because I feel like I'm being disrespectful, but I've got to give my opinion, you know. And I just feel like that was a bad call. That was a bad call on his part. Amari Akhmedov was his last fight, but he lost to Reyes. He lost to Jacare. He beat Kelvin Gastelum, but that was a back and forth fight as well, man. That wasn't like a walkover for him, and that was back in 2017. A while back. And then before that, he lost to Gegard Mousasi. He lost to Yair Romero. He lost to Luke Rockhold. I don't know whether he's just got like delusions of grandeur. I don't know whether I don't know what he sees when he looks in the mirror. I don't know what version of himself he sees. And I don't know. I just don't understand the thought process behind calling out Israel. Is it just one last payday before he retires? Is he genuine in believing that he can get back there and he can be a champion again? Because if he does believe that, then I just feel like he should focus on actually trying to climb the ladder again, and actually focusing on, all right, let's fight a top 10 opponent. Let's get through this top 10 opponent. All right, let's focus on number 6. Let's focus on number 4. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know where his confidence is. I don't know the guy. And like I say, I'm a big fan of Chris Weidman. Like, every time I've seen him in an interview or just in a media situation, you can't help but like the guy, man. He's a family guy. He seems like a nice guy. He comes across well. He talks well. He's just funny on social media, the way he interacts with his teammates and whatnot. So it's difficult to talk about him in this way, but I just couldn't get my head around that call out, man. Just for the simple fact that who's actually going to turn around and say, you know what, Chris, you're right, let's make that fight? Is Dana White going to sit there in fucking Abu Dhabi, wherever he is, in his massive suite, looking at Twitter and saying, oh, Chris Weidman's called out Israel, let's get on the phone and get that fight made? Like, it's not logical, innit? It doesn't make sense. So even if you think it, keep it to yourself. Get a good win and then try your luck. But yeah, I mean, the next thing is Costa. Paulo Costa. Signing the contract. That's a shit accent. But what contract? Who's giving you which contract? There is no contract. What's he going to sign? The back of a receipt. Like, what? He's making these videos. Oh, I had some problem, and then the last fight, I don't want to make excuses. And then what contract though? There is no who's giving you a contract? I'm pretty certain there is no contract. Just focus on fighting a top 5 fighter. Brunson is calling you out. Focus on fighting Brunson. Get that fight and fight that guy. If you actually believe that there was something wrong and you have a reason why you lost to Stylebender, then work your way back, because off of that performance, you don't deserve a rematch. You literally did nothing in that fight to merit a rematch, because you did nothing to show that you can win if you fight again. Apart from this excuse that you've come up with without actually telling anybody what the excuse is. You just said there's something wrong, but I'm not making excuses. But you are making excuses. But it's even worse because you're not even telling us what was wrong. So what the fuck? It literally makes no sense, and you just keep talking about a contract. Showing the contract. What? Who gave you a contract? Where did you get it from? You just got a piece of paper and wrote it down. I want to fight Stylebender. These guys. All right. So the next thing, the welterweight division at the moment. Ooh, nearly dropped my coaster there. Nearly dropped it. The welterweight division. So obviously Kamaru Usman was due to fight Gilbert Burns at the end of the year. I think it was meant to be December. But Kamaru Usman isn't going to be ready. So first and foremost, I just want to say this. If there's anybody out there that thinks that there should be an interim title because Kamaru Usman isn't going to be ready for a fight in December, when he just fought in, was it June or July or whenever it was, when he fought Masvidal? No. There shouldn't be an interim title fight. He's saying he can't fight in December. He's not saying he won't fight until next December in 2021. Like, from what I understand, he won't be ready in December, but he can be ready in like February or March or January. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's not that deep. He's not injured for like 6 months. So there should be no interim title, like, because it's fine, isn't it? Like, how many champions have you got within the UFC that haven't defended their title in a 5-6 month period? Like, it happens all the time. It happens all the time. But what I wanted to talk about is this beef that Gilbert Burns, or Ali Abdelaziz, if he's tweeting on behalf of Gilbert Burns, this beef that they've got with Ariel Helwani. So look, clearly Ali doesn't like Ariel, and he calls him a bitch on a regular basis, and something's happened behind the scenes there. But Ariel Helwani expresses an opinion, and to me, it's quite a valid opinion. It's a valid opinion for this reason. So, let me tell you what the opinion is. So Ariel was like, okay, well, look, if Kamaru Usman's out, why not make Leon Edwards against Gilbert Burns for a number one title, number one contender fight, and then the winner fights Kamaru Usman when Kamaru Usman is ready. Gilbert Burns' response is, I'm already number one contender. Why am I going to fight somebody to prove that I'm the number one contender? And I understand that. I understand that standpoint. I get it. I understand. But, and I'm not saying this is a reason why Gilbert Burns should fight Leon Edwards. But you have to remember, back in March of this year, Leon Edwards was due to fight Tyrone Woodley in London. And I think that was the first card to get cancelled because of the global pandemic. And who benefited from that? Gilbert Burns. Because Gilbert Burns fought Tyrone Woodley, beat Tyrone Woodley, and then took that number one contender spot. Now, he was due to fight Kamaru in June, or he was due to fight Kamaru at, was it Fight? I think it was Fight Island. Yeah. Masvidal fought Kamaru Usman on Fight Island, I think, and that was supposed to be Gilbert's fight. So Gilbert directly benefited from the fact that Leon Edwards couldn't fight against Tyrone Woodley. Now we're in a position where Kamaru Usman can't fight, and like, that position could have been Leon Edwards's, basically, is what I'm trying to say, had it not been for COVID. So there is an argument that the UFC as an organisation can make and say, right, you're gonna fight Leon Edwards. It's only fair for you guys to actually have a fight and determine who is the number one contender, because that spot really could have been Leon Edwards. And you can argue that it already should be Leon Edwards because of the strength of his resume over the last 3 years or so. So there's an argument to be had there, but I can understand the logic for Gilbert Burns and his management team saying, no, we'll just wait. We fought Tyrone Woodley back in whenever it was. We'll just wait. We'll wait. And Kamaru Usman and Gilbert are both managed by the same bloke. So I can understand the logic behind them saying, no, we're not going to fight Leon Edwards. But I can understand the UFC's logic if they are to turn around and say, I'll tell you what, you and Leon fight each other. But I can't see a situation or a scenario where they force the hand, because Gilbert Burns is a guy that Dana White was adamant is the number one contender. And this was around the time when Jorge Masvidal was having his differences with the UFC about pay and stuff like that. And to kind of deter people from focusing on Jorge Masvidal being the number one contender, Dana White was just overly adamant that Gilbert Burns should be the number one contender. So Jorge Masvidal fighting Kamaru Usman doesn't even matter because he's not even the number one contender, even though that's the fight that the UFC were originally trying to make. Do you get the point I'm trying to make? So they've already put their eggs in that basket, the Gilbert Burns basket, and said he's the number one contender, he deserves a title shot. And just ignored the circumstances under which Gilbert Burns managed to get that position as the number one contender. So they've kind of painted themselves in a corner, so I can't see that happening. So what does that actually mean for Leon Edwards? What should he do? Because he hasn't fought, I understand, since June of 2019. So let's pull up his week Wikipedia page. Leon Edwards. I bet you there's like 53 different Leon Edwards. Yeah, there's Panetta, composer. Let's try this one. Yes, it's the right one. Get in there. Alright, so yeah, he hasn't fought since July 2019 when he outpointed Rafael dos Anjos. So he's in this weird position where he's dividing opinion amongst the MMA community, and that includes fans, that includes pundits, journalists, that includes ex-fighters, that includes current fighters, because a lot of people are sympathetic towards Leon Edwards and saying, look man, he's won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in a row. He deserves a title shot. He deserves that chance. But the longer him not fighting goes on, and the more other people in that division do, example, Kobe Covington beating Tyron Woodley recently, and potentially getting himself a fight with Jorge Masvidal, and the more people, other fighters at 170 pounds do, the less emphasis is put on Leon Edwards and what he's achieved since 2016. It's a difficult position for him. Wonderboy's been calling him out, talking about wanting to fight him, the most respectful call out you'll ever see on social media, and Leon Edwards has been anti-fighting him. Leon Edwards has been calling out Gilbert Burns, and I understand and appreciate the fact that he wants to fight up people that are ranked above him rather than fighting down, because he probably feels like he's been doing that for a while. But it's very difficult, innit? It's very difficult to say or preempt or predict how things are going to play out. But for me, Gilbert Burns and Kamaru Usman, if that's not going to happen till January, February, March next year, and if in that time Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal fight and somebody wins that fight, then I'm sorry, like, they're next. So Leon Edwards needs to do something so he can also say, y'all must have forgot, the same way Izzy said it after he beat Paulo Costa. He needs to remind us. He needs to remind, not me, I know, I believe he is the number one contender. I believe he should have a title shot. And it might be because I'm biased because he's British, but it is what it is. I believe he should have a title shot. He should be next up before Gilbert Burns. And I've said this from day one. But it's not up to me. It's not my decision to make. And I feel sorry for him because he's got to this position and he's not getting the respect I believe he deserves. He's not getting the love I believe he deserves. And I don't mean, he should be a higher profile fighter. Fuck all that. Even just generally, like, I don't think his skills are given the respect that I feel like he's earned in terms of the way he's dominated opponents. But he needs a fight, man. He needs a fight. And I can understand his reluctance to fight Wonderboy, but that doesn't look good on him. Do you know what I mean? It looks like he's ducking him a little bit because he's picking and choosing opponents. And I understand. I know he's not ducking him. I know he's not scared to fight Wonderboy because he believes he's the number one contender. But the problem is, does everybody else believe he's the number one contender? Do the people that matter believe he's the number one contender? Because unfortunately, when it comes to this sport, it's not just based on how good you are. It's based on other things, exterior things, how much traction you get on social media, how you can build the fight, and just what your character is like outside the cage. And I like Leon Edwards on Twitter, and I like the way he talks shit. Like, I liked it when he tweeted Jorge Masvidal and said, "Fight me, pussy," and just stuff like that. I like it, and it might just be because it's an English thing. I just get when he says things, I laugh, and I like the way he talks shit. But these Americans don't seem to appreciate it. So he's got to do something. So why am I here? Okay, yeah. So UFC rankings. I just want to see who is in the top 10 of the welterweight division. So let's have a look. So you got Colby Covington. That's a good fight. That's a fight that I would happily see. Like, if they said Colby against Leon Edwards, and that is a number one contender spot, So the winner of that fight fights Gilbert Burns against Kamaru Usman. If I'm Leon Edwards, I'll snap your hand off for that opportunity. But then you got Gilbert Burns, then you got Leon himself, then you got Jorge Masvidal. I don't think that fight's going to happen. Jorge Masvidal has excelled. He's pushed himself to the next level. He's in a different stratosphere. So that fight's not going to happen. Then you got Thompson. Then you got Maia. Has he already beaten Maia? He hasn't. But Maia is on his last fight of his contract, and they're talking about him fighting Khamzat. Then you got Tyron Woodley. So that's a fight that could be a little bit tasty. Actually making that fight happen. You got Michael Chiesa, then you got Dos Anjos, then you got Magny at number 10. So the names at the bottom of that top 10 list aren't very glamorous, you know. And beating one of those names isn't really going to give you that push you need to say, I am the number one contender. If he goes in there and fights Wonderboy, then then it's just all bets are off. Then it's just, yeah, all right, fine, he's done it. He's beaten everybody he needs to beat. And the guys that he's willing to fight, aka Masvidal, Gilbert Burns and Covington, aren't willing to fight him. They're avoiding him, whether it's for commercial reasons, whether it's just from an actual skill set point of view, and they're actually ducking him. He would have completed the game until it's time to fight for the title. But time will tell, man. I just worry a little bit about him, and I just don't want the game to kind of pass him by, sort of thing. So, yeah, that's that. The next thing I wanted to talk about is Tony Ferguson. So I saw his interview, I listened to it because I don't think he was on camera. I listened to his interview with Ariel Helwani that he did yesterday, and Tony Ferguson is a peculiar man. He's very eccentric. He is... What is the right word? Let's just say eccentric. Let's just leave it there. But the way he says things, and it reminds me in a funny sort of way of Nick Diaz, because Nick Diaz, like, you'll ask him a question and then he'll just kind of start talking and his thoughts will just trickle along, and it will take him somewhere else off on a tangent, and then she'll come back around somewhat, and then he will finish what he's saying, and you're like, hold on, what the fuck? Like, did you answer the question or not? And Tony Ferguson is very similar. But the reason why I wanted to talk about Tony Ferguson isn't that, because I like Tony Ferguson. I like listening to him speak, even though I don't quite understand some of the stuff that he says. He made a comment about being offered the Michael Chandler fight on the undercard of Khabib and Gaethje. And he said that he didn't want to fight Michael Chandler because, one, not a lot of people know who he is, and two, why should I fight this guy if he's getting paid more than me? And that's what caught my ear, because I don't for 1 second believe that Michael Chandler's come in here and he's managed to negotiate himself a contract where he's getting paid more than Tony Ferguson and Dustin Poirier. Because Michael Chandler was a free agent, and I don't feel like the UFC were overly desperate to bring him on board. It was just a logical acquisition of talent. It wasn't someone that they thought, fuck, we got to have this guy. We got to have him. I made a video about Michael Chandler, which you can check out on my page when he signed with the UFC, and I was questioning whether he's just like that one little bit over the hill. Obviously, only time will tell with that, but the fact that Tony Ferguson made that comment and why he was reluctant to fight Michael Chandler, I just wanted to say that, really. Like, that made me think a little bit. Michael Chandler, I wonder how much he's getting paid. And fuck me, fair play to him. If he can squeeze every last penny out of the UFC. But firstly, how would he even know how much Michael Chandler's getting paid? And secondly, like, I can understand why he didn't want to fight Michael Chandler. But that's also a bit of a departure from his stance that he used to have before he fought Gaethje, because he was literally, I don't care, I'll fight anyone, anywhere. And he did that up until he fought Gaethje. So I don't know whether this is him turning a corner in terms of managing his own career. I don't know whether he didn't want to fight Michael Chandler because he had his heart set on fighting Dustin Poirier, and he felt that fight can still be made. But just the fact that he didn't want to fight Michael Chandler over money, that surprised me a little bit. But like I say, who knows how much Michael Chandler's earning? And if he's earning a lot, fair play to him, because that's what we like to see. Fighters earning as much money as possible. As I tick through my list. All right, so this is the last thing. Last thing I wanted to talk about. So I made a video also about Conor McGregor and his beef with the UFC. So you can check that out on my channel. And by the way, I literally just put this shirt on especially for this video. Gonna take it off and hang it up straight after. So Conor offered Dustin a fight. So pretty soon after Conor tweeted about having this charity MMA match with Dustin Poirier, and Dustin Poirier basically saying that he's in, Dana White made comments about the fact, basically saying that the fight had been offered to both Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier, and they had almost had a deadline to either accept or decline that offer. So Poirier quite publicly tweeted saying, I'm in. And apparently Conor hasn't responded to that offer. And since then, the deadline has expired, which effectively means he has declined that offer. So I just wanted to talk about the offer itself and how the offer came about. And I just wanted to kind of give my opinion about that, because I said in my previous video, I'm not sure how much that the UFC actually want Conor McGregor to fight these guys. Like, I feel like Dana White has got his heart set on Conor McGregor against Khabib too. And I don't know whether these offers that are being made are actual genuine offers and they really want to see Conor McGregor back in the cage, the octagon, or whether they're just box ticking exercises to offer him a fight because contractually that's what they have to do. So we all know these UFC fighters, in their contracts, the UFC have to offer them a certain number of fights every year to avoid being in breach of their contracts. So for Dana White to say we've made, I'm assuming it was a formal offer. I don't know whether when these offers come in, whether there's a monetary value attached to it. I'm assuming Conor McGregor, in his contract, he has a base pay in his deal, right? So I don't know, let's just say for argument's sake that Conor McGregor, in his contract, his base pay is $1 million. So if the UFC have made Conor McGregor an offer of, okay, do you want to fight Dustin Poirier for $1 million on this date? That's a formal offer. So that box ticking exercise of fulfilling the contractual obligations to the fighter has been met. But it's Conor McGregor. And we know Conor McGregor isn't a guy that just fights for a show and win. Like, every time Conor McGregor fights, there's a whole negotiation that goes in on him fighting. You got to negotiate the opponent. You got to negotiate the venue. You got to negotiate the pay-per-view points. You got to negotiate the base pay. You got to negotiate what, like he's not just a fighter that has a contract and he fights for the value on his contract per fight. Each fight is a different deal is struck. So this offer that went in, I don't know in what format or how much detail was provided in that offer. But for me, it just feels like it was a box ticking exercise to fulfill their contractual obligation to Conor McGregor. And I don't know, like I said before, like, it feels like they just don't want Conor McGregor to fight until Khabib is ready for a rematch, effectively. And let's just quickly talk about this. So another thing that Dana White said is, in this interview with this geezer from, is it Barstool? And this was like last week or something, basically going, oh yeah, Khabib was ready to do tough with Conor McGregor, the Ultimate Fighter, so they were going to be the two head coaches. Khabib was ready for it, but then when Khabib made these comments, when Conor made these comments about the UFC, about Dana, when he exposed the DMs that he had from Dana White, Khabib decided that he didn't want to fight Conor. Like, why would Khabib see Conor McGregor tweet about Dana and then take this moral high ground and say, no, I'm not fighting him now. I'm not doing it. That doesn't even make any sense. Like, if Conor had said something about Khabib, yeah, fine, all right, I get it. Like, I don't buy that, or I don't believe that for a second. But going back to this particular point, I don't know whether it's because the UFC, Dana White, would rather Conor McGregor fight Khabib and just wait until that fight is here because they don't want to risk Conor McGregor losing in the interim, or whether it's just fatigue, whether the relationship between the UFC and Conor McGregor has just waned to a level where they just can't be asked. They cannot be bothered to deal with Conor McGregor and his manager. They just don't care. They don't care. They don't care for Conor McGregor to fight in the UFC again. So they're just fulfilling their contractual obligations and just keeping the wheels moving, because like they don't believe that Conor is serious about fighting again. And until they get that sense from him, then they can start having real conversations with him. Because right now, this offer that came in, I don't know how real or how it could be a real offer, but I don't really know how, because obviously there's a strain in the relationship, right? And if the UFC really, 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 really wanted Conor McGregor to fight, then they'd understand what his character is like and how he needs to be treated to feel loved again, and what steps they need to make to meet him halfway. You lot can't even see my hands, but I'm doing stuff. Like, what steps they need to make for that fight to be made. And if they're just giving an offer without doing those supplementary steps of putting the arm around Conor and saying, come on, man, trying to make him feel better about the situation and himself and the UFC, etc., giving him the love that he feels he needs, sorting out the issues that he feels exist, then like, do they actually want him to fight? Do they want Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor to fight at some point this year? Because of the fact that the Kamaru Usman and Gilbert Burns fight isn't happening in December, there is an opportunity to have a Conor McGregor fight. There is an opportunity to have them headline that show. And I heard Helwani talk about the UFC being reluctant for that to happen, because the there's a title fight on that card. Who is on that card? Is it Valentina? I can't remember. There's a women's fight on that card, and the UFC might be reluctant to put Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier on that card, because that will make the pay-per-view sales go through the roof, and as the women's champion, and maybe the contender as well, they get pay-per-view points. So they're slicing the pie in more pieces than the UFC would like to slice it in. But they have to think to themselves, if we try and put a fight between this women's fight, I should really check who it is that's fighting, but I can't be asked. If they put this women's fight as a headline for a pay-per-view, what are they going to buy? How much revenue are they going to make? If they put Conor and Dustin on that card, how much more revenue are they going to make? All right, fine, they have to give a piece of the pie to the ladies, but they're still making more money out of it. Or they just give the ladies, or they just restructure the agreement with the ladies and say to them, look, if it's just you two headlining this card, you won't even make pay-per-view points, because you won't hit the minimum pay-per-view buys for you to get points. So what we're going to do is sweeten the deal and give you a capped pay at this level, which is way above what you would have made anyway, but it's less than what you would have if you were going to get pay-per-view points. And if you say no, we'll just move your fight to a different pay-per-view. But I think it's that simple, really. It is the UFC. They do what they want when they want. Generally, why would this stop them? Why would a women's title fight stop them from putting Conor and Dustin as the main event of that card? But yeah, a lot of stuff's been going on over the last week, and I've taken up quite a lot of your time. So I think I will leave it there. Before I go, I just quickly want to say, yeah, I've been looking at my stats of people that download my podcast. And you know what? There's this, I don't know who it is, whether it's multiple people, but for some reason, people in Hawaii are listening to my shit. So whoever you are in Hawaii, or if there's a group of you, whoever it is, thank you. Thank you. I'm really grateful, man. And if you've managed to get this far, my social media details are in my podcast, like when you download it. So it's at the Battle Camp on Twitter and on Instagram. So slide into my DMs and say hello, because I appreciate the fact that people in Hawaii are listening to me. And it might just be by accident. They might just accidentally have downloaded it and they don't even listen. So if you actually heard this 49 minutes into this bloody monologue that I've been doing, thank you for downloading. I really appreciate it. And that goes for anyone downloading this on audio, anyone watching this at the Battle Camp. Feel free to say hello on social media. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your time. If you've enjoyed it, subscribe, share, comment on anything that I've discussed, any of the multitude of subjects that I've talked about. Out of breath. I'll talk to you guys next time.